From the Jacob Javits Center in New York City, it's the 2016 Cannabis World Congress and Business Expo. Here's Atalo Holdings Chairman Andrew R. Graves and others speaking on industrial hemp.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jeff Whaling. Not only am I involved in the presentation of CWCB Expo, but I am also the president of the Pennsylvania Hemp Industry Council. I'm going to act as your moderator today. Our panel discussion, Made in America, is really to further the discussion of the steps necessary to really build a national crop and a manufacturing base for industrial hemp. Some might ask why we are talking about industrial hemp as part of a cannabis show. I believe strongly that the sooner that we start to introduce this language about cannabis in America, the sooner the public and our legislators will start to understand this product is beneficial to all. Many know cannabis as medical marijuana, but they don't know of the potential of industrial hemp. I'm very fortunate that I have been able to work with a great group of people in Pennsylvania. We just recently passed unanimously 2 pieces of legislation. First time in 18 years that the state of Pennsylvania has been able to do that, but it took a lot of education. We're seeing that across the country as well. So I have tried to bring together those that I consider to be the leaders in this industry from a national perspective. And I'd like to thank my colleagues at CW Expo for providing us with this opportunity. To join me in this discussion today, I would like to introduce Joel Stanley, Jonathan Miller, Tim Gordon, Eric Steenstra, and Andrew Graves. And I guess we could just get started more towards with Eric. Eric has been involved in this industry for about 25 years. Eric has led the fight to reintroduce industrial hemp for that period, and 12 years ago started Vote Hemp, and has been really battling independently for many of those years to raise the profile of this important crop in America. So Eric, might you just share with us what you're doing? And I think there's a microphone that's close by.
I think I got one here. Yeah, Jeff, thanks so much for inviting me to be on the panel and for this excellent event.
Thank you.
This is an exciting time to be in the industry. You guys are going to hear from some of the people that are actually doing good work to bring this product to market. And the funny thing is, when I started in the industry, the only way to get involved in doing anything with hemp was to go overseas to find sources of hemp and then import it. And most of the industry is built on imports. So we've got over $500 million market that's been developed over 20 some years. And all the products are coming from Canada, from Europe, from China, from other countries. And it seemed, early on it seemed to us it didn't make a whole lot of sense that American farmers couldn't be involved in this, that we couldn't source the product here. If farmers could grow it in England or Germany or France or Canada, why couldn't American farmers be growing this too? And so we realized that we really needed to have political arms working specifically on the issue, because when we talked to legislators, they didn't have any clue, they didn't really understand what hemp was, and it was clear that it was going to take a lot of education work to get them to realize that this was something that we did need to change. And so, it's just been a slow, methodical process. When we started Vote Hemp, we had some maybe lofty goals. We thought that within 5 years we could affect some real change. And well, it took us 5 years to get the first federal hemp bill introduced. And at that time, Representative Ron Paul, who's a Republican from Texas, was the first to introduce a bill at the federal level. And he wasn't exactly in the mainstream of the Republican Party, and so it was, it's kind of been a long, slow process. But in any case, we finally had a breakthrough in 2013. The Congress, Representative Polis from Colorado introduced an amendment to the Farm Bill. They allowed amendments out on the floor that would allow for university research. And it was the first time we'd had a vote on the issue in Congress in many years. And so we were very fortunate. We got a nice bipartisan vote for it. It was 225 to 200 with 63 Republicans and 162 Democrats that voted for the bill. And so clearly some of the education had taken effect, and then we were really also especially fortunate that the situation in Kentucky had laid the groundwork for some further progress and success. And what I mean by that is that there was an agriculture commissioner in the state of Kentucky. A lot of states, the agriculture commissioner is appointed by the governor, but in Kentucky it's an elected position. And the gentleman who had run for the position in Kentucky had won the agriculture commissioner by something like 20 points in a year when the rest of the ticket had lost. And he had campaigned as one of his top issues was bringing back hemp farming to Kentucky. And I think that raised some eyebrows there in the state. And his name is James Comer, and just a great guy. He was a farmer, and he had worked in the state legislature and had a lot of credibility, and he was able to push through legislation at the state level to change the law and really open the issue up. There was actually a hearing that he held, one of the most amazing hearings I've ever attended. It had the head of the state police as in opposition, and you had multiple sitting members of Congress, including Rand Paul, John Yarmouth, Thomas Massey. There was a farmer from North Dakota who had been a longtime advocate, and then his former CIA director, all testifying in behalf of hemp. And so anyways, Comer was successful in getting this bill passed, and he was determined to push the program forward, and that led to a lot of people in the Kentucky delegation taking a second look at this issue, and ultimately to Mitch McConnell going from somebody who was opposed to the issue to realizing that this was something that could be really beneficial to the state. And so that was a huge help too in getting this farm bill through. He actually was able to expand the language, and in any case, when the farm bill passed, what it essentially does is it allowed for state departments of agriculture and for universities to do research and pilot programs in states where it was allowed. So Kentucky was first out of the gate, and there's a couple folks here. Jonathan Miller from Kentucky, who led the fight. There's a lot of additional work that had to be done to finally get this going, and then Andy Graves is also here, can talk a little bit about what they've been doing on the ground. So I guess maybe that's enough of a sort of introduction, Jeff. I can turn it over.
And certainly we're going to kind of get into an open discussion and welcome questions, but thanks very much, Eric. And as if he knew what I was going to ask next, Jonathan Miller has really been the bat for the state of Kentucky, but more importantly as the counsel for the Kentucky Hemp Industry Council. His law firm and his colleagues have really looked at the Farm Bill, which we refer to as 7606, and he has really worked to make sure that this legislation was really introduced to help benefit the state of Kentucky. Obviously, there were going to be a number of challenges because Kentucky took that opportunity, introduced legislation so that they could really start an industry. The DEA, I believe Jonathan said not so fast. Jonathan said absolutely. And maybe Jonathan, you can kind of carry on.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jonathan, and I'm a recovering politician. Thank you. Thanks for your sympathies. I was the elected state treasurer for 2 terms. And just like most politicians in the old days, and by old days I'm talking more than 3 years ago, I was reflexively opposed to anything having to do with cannabis because I didn't have to think about it. It was an easy political issue. We had this guy who would run for governor and other offices every year. He was the smartest, funniest guy on the stump. Except he had one problem. All he did was he would constantly talk about legalizing marijuana, and he also would apparently smoke it. And so people would discount his other great ideas and his name was Gatewood, but his nickname was Gateweed, and never won office. Well, about 4 years ago, he passed away, and as a tribute to him, I decided I was going to look at the issue for the first time. I'm out of politics. I write for an online magazine called The Daily Beast, and I realized Gatewood was right. I wrote an article called Gatewood Was Right, We Should Legalize Marijuana. The newspaper called me the next day and said, Jonathan, we're doing a series on industrial hemp. What do you think about industrial hemp? And I said, well, it's the same thing, isn't it? Of course I support it. I did a little research and understood it wasn't the same thing, and wrote a piece about it. And Commissioner Comer called me up, and Commissioner Comer's a conservative Republican, I'm a liberal Democrat. He said, I'd like to fight this battle, legislature, will you help me? I said, of course I'll help you, we're going to lose, but I'm happy to help you. And as Eric explained, Jamie Comer's confidence was much greater than my doubt, and not only did it pass overwhelmingly against all the leading state officials were opposed to it, and they all turned, but because of the education process that happened, we now have a deep and abiding consensus in Kentucky, not just among the political leadership, but among the population, that industrial hemp is a very good thing, and that they understand the difference between hemp and marijuana. And so what we now have is, and this is really important to understand, particularly when we talk about some of the issues that are plaguing the marijuana industry, banking issues, which I know are on a lot of folks' mind, that there is a very distinct legal regime between marijuana and industrial hemp, the way the federal government treats it. As you know, I mean, most of you, I imagine, in this room are very aware that marijuana is legal in 20-something states. Again, I don't study it. You all probably know the exact number. But it's illegal on the federal level, which causes a great deal of problems. It is different for hemp because under the appropriate circumstances, industrial hemp is legal under federal law. And that's a very important point because it will make a big difference as we move forward. There's two pieces of legislation that are critical to understanding that our groups have been, all of us on the stage have been fighting for to get us to this point. First of all is the Farm Bill, or 7606, that Eric and Jeff have mentioned, which created this regime where states that pass regulatory structures can create pilot programs and do memorandums of understanding between state departments of agriculture, universities, and individual farmers, like Andy, who'll be talking about in a second, to do these pilot programs. We got that Farm Bill passed. We were so excited. We started to import hemp seeds for the 12 pilot programs that were launched in the first year of Kentucky's program, and the DEA seized our hemp seeds at the customs. So we went to court, federal court in Louisville, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Each time the DEA backed down. Ultimately, we had a memorandum of agreement between the DEA and the Commissioner of Agriculture that said we could import the hemp seeds. And in the first year, Kentucky had 12 successful pilot projects. In the second year, Kentucky had over 120 successful pilot projects. And this year, we're in the third year, it's over 200. So there still was this uncertainty, though, because the Farm Bill said it was a little vague in terms of what a study was. It used the word marketing as a potential study, but it wasn't clear whether or not you could actually sell the products. It wasn't clear whether you could ship across state lines. And so Senator McConnell, and again, I want to, every time I praise Senator McConnell, I want you to remember, I'm a liberal Democrat. So a liberal Democrat in Kentucky and Senator McConnell, praising Senator McConnell is a very odd thing. But Senator McConnell, again, to great credit, not only helped get that Farm Bill passed, but at the end of last year, the so-called omnibus law, and you might not know that term, but you probably remember that at the end of last year, just like several times over the last 5 years, there was this big battle between the House and the Senate and the President. We need to pass the appropriations bills before the end of the year. If we don't pass them, then the government's going to shut down. And so the omnibus bill took all the spending bills, all the 12 or 13 appropriations bills, put them all together and passed it in one lump sum. And in this multi-thousand-page bill, there was a couple lines inserted by Senator McConnell that said that no federal agency can use that uses federal dollars can interfere with state pilot programs. Read DEA. Number two, it said that they can't interfere with, and it lists a bunch of different things, but most importantly for our purposes, the interstate transport or sale of products that are produced in these pilot programs. And that's huge. Now, to be clear, if I went out there on the street, or even in Kentucky, and I know New York's actually passed a hemp law, but if I went anywhere in this country, even in the great states of Kentucky and Colorado, which have great hemp pilot programs, and I just by myself planted hemp seed in the ground and tried to grow hemp, I would be violating federal law, I'd be violating state law, and in fact, hemp is still treated as a Schedule I narcotic under the Controlled Substances Act, just like heroin, much worse than Schedule II cocaine. Hemp, by definition, is less than 0.3% THC, meaning there's no psychoactive impact. But if I did it outside of a pilot program, did it on my own, I could go to federal prison for trafficking in a controlled substance. However, if I did that, if I signed a memorandum of understanding with either my State Department of Agriculture and or with my university in one of the 20-something states that have passed regulatory regimes, I am fully protected by state law, and I can transport and sell it across state lines, which is a huge difference, meaning that folks that are now exploring this whole issue should not be interfered with by any federal agency. Now, that doesn't mean it's not going to happen, and that doesn't mean that the DEA reads everything the way we do. And that's why it's so important, the work that Eric leads, to get passage of legislation in Congress, ultimately to take hemp off of the Controlled Substances Act. There are bills that we're mounting with sponsors to be able to do that. And until we get that federal legislation passed, we're not fully in the clear. But if any of you are interested in this industry and are looking at how the state and federal law plays, we have a lot of room here. I wrote an opinion letter in December, which has been much distributed and which has been used by a lot of these groups. But it is a source of great comfort right now, what's happened in federal law. Let me, before I conclude, just say one thing. The other area of interest is a sub-area of hemp, which you'll hear more about from Joel and I assume from others on the panel as well, is the issue of CBD, cannabidiol. And that is, when CBD is produced with less than 0.3 THC, it is considered hemp. And it passes all through all the positive stuff I just said to you before about hemp. And so if I am growing hemp and I produce CBD oil as part of a pilot program in Kentucky, I should be able to sell that CBD oil across the country without violating federal law. We still have a few sticky things, and we can get into details if you're interested as we go along. The FDA has certain concerns about how that's marketed. There have been a number of things issued online that we can go into detail. And also, we have a number of states that have state laws that are in conflict with federal law, and that is something that we need to be able to deal with when we're selling hemp products in those non-hemp states. But in the past 3 years, we have come an enormous way, and hopefully in the next few years, with passage of legislation at the federal level that clears this all up, hemp will be a widely accepted crop, just treated like soybeans and corn and everything else. And as we say in Kentucky, Kentucky is the international leader of hemp for more than 200 years with a 75-year interruption. But we will return to being that international leader, and hopefully those of you from other states will find great success as well.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. So we've started out with Eric, who's talked about the legislative process. We've talked to Jonathan about the legal challenges and what we can do now under the current legislation that's in place. And I think there's no better person who can really talk about taking advantage of that opportunity than Andy, who his family has been involved in this industry for many years. And he is now part of a group called Atalo Holdings. They're going to be the largest growers of industrial hemp in the nation this year, and I think it's somewhat about 2,400 acres that you've got under contract. And maybe, Andy, you can kind of go over that history and where you are, share, the business model that you're working with so many farmers under contract, and, how you see this moving forward in Kentucky, because we all want to do it in our states.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Jeff, for all that you've done here. This is a very nice show. Very
And he's
high
a
class.
gentleman.
So I want to tell you that I'm a 7th generation hemp grower. My family has been in Kentucky since before it was a state. We have been hemp growers through all those years except for the last 70 plus years. We have many pictures of my father, who's 90, in hemp fields. Of course, those were the days when they broke hemp out with hemp breaks. We were seed growers, because remember that Kentucky is strategically located in a very good spot between the 30th and 40th parallels. That makes it a special spot because that band that goes around the world is where most of the seed that we use is produced. So Kentucky has always been a good spot to grow hemp. It got mixed up with all of the falderall with marijuana some years later, and there was no hemp being grown. In the meantime, that was when tobacco took a foothold in Kentucky. So my story with this subject starts personally 25 years ago when I was a tobacco farmer, and I knew the writing was on the wall. It would be a crop that would be less and less seen in the landscape. And I met some fellows, and we began the march to educate people about what industrial hemp is and what it could be. Today, we operate under the pilot program, and I would say to you that 25 years ago, I went to see Mitch McConnell. By the way, he was elected even then. I mean, he'd been up there forever, which is good, and it's bad too. But anyway, I walked in his office and he would barely open the door. I was with my father and my brother. He spoke to my dad because he recognized my father because, Jonathan, you'll hate this, we are conservative Republicans.
I love it.
And he told my father, he said, Jake, there's no votes in this, there's no money in it, and if people see you in here with me, they'll know what we're talking about, and it's liable to cost me my job. Now, boy, let's roll 25 years forward. Today, it's probably going to be his legacy in our state. What he did for us, what he did for farmers in the 2014 Farm Bill was brave. It was correct. He knew the subject. The people in the state of Kentucky, the farmers, are versed in the subject, and therefore we are leading the hemp industry in production and sales. That's a big statement, but we know what it is and we know what to do with it. There's a lot of work to do. Now, today I am chairman of the Atalo Holdings company. Our CEO is in the crowd, Bill Hilliard. We are located on a 147-acre property in, we call it Winchester, Kentucky. We call it the heart of hemp country now, and it is. It's an old tobacco seed plant that's been repurposed. It's beautiful property. Some have seen it. Maybe some of you know about it. On that piece of property, it's called Hemp Research, because all of what we do in the state of Kentucky is under the guise of research. We certainly are allowed to sell the crop, but it is all about research, so we operate under the MOU system. It's very important, and it's about chain of custody. That's the way you get to sell this crop outside of your state lines or to other people. The state is happy for you to do it. They just want you to record and let them know where the chain of custody exists. So our company is 2 years old, year and a half. We have 58 growers this year, growing 2,500 acres of hemp. We have 450 acres of that 2,500 being grown for CBD production. We currently, as a company, today are the largest production growers of CBD, hemp for CBD, and we are, and I have no way to verify this, but let's suffice it to say that we are large extractors of CBD-rich sativa. It's a very wonderful crop to have growing when, remember, I was a tobacco farmer. So today it's easy to stand up in public and say, I don't really grow something that kills people. I actually get to grow something that helps people. It means a lot in the community to me as a farmer, which I am one of the growers. Might be running a company, but we still are working and growing. We also have a little over 1,000 acres of production of grain. We're in 21 counties. There's 120 counties in the whole state. Our company represents over half of all of the production in the state of Kentucky. We're approved to grow in the state of Kentucky this year a total of 4,500 acres, 4,600 acres, I think, and we have over half of that. So these farmers go through a training program. They receive their MOUs after they've applied. They have to go through background checks. Remember, I told you about the reportings and the research that it's all under. They actually report in the KDA, as we call them, Kentucky Department of Agriculture, comes out and takes coordinates of the fields. That's very important. That helps the farmers during planting time, or if the state gets a call, the police get a call. It keeps it all legal. This field is hemp. If there's anything over here that's illegal, then that's not part of the program. A pilot program is an interesting thing. We've learned that because it has no federal appropriation, the 5-year window for appropriated crops means nothing to it. So if you're a corn, soybeans, rice, or wheat, you're an appropriated crop. You have a federal appropriation, we don't. So we don't know whether the law will change and they'll decouple hemp from marijuana, but we really don't worry about it much because we operate under a pilot program that we think has a long life. We do not think it'll be brought up in Congress and written out of the Farm Bill. So it allows us some ease when we think about spending real capital on infrastructure. And believe me, we are making infrastructure a big word. We have lots of verticals in our company for revenue streams. CBD is one, the hemp for grain and all of the products that are raised or a result of that are the other. Plus we import 14 varieties of seed, all on certified lists. We actually replicate, and we actually grow, replicate some seed. We're actually able to, we have our own proprietary brands, and we are in the business. Make no mistake, we are growing hemp. We're the leaders in the business. We plan on remaining the leaders, and in so doing, you have to act accordingly. You have to do things right. You have to represent yourself well in the public. You have to treat the farmers right. You have to pay the farmers. It's a big responsibility, but we're proud of what we're doing in our state. We're happy to be part of it, and I would tell you, it is a wonderful feeling to be involved in it today when I know where I started and what ugly receptions I got in some cases. And people made jokes, and they didn't understand why a kid with such a good reputation and a family with a good reputation would want to be bothered in some sort of thing like this. Today, different story. So thank you. I hope you understand what we do, and I'll give it back to Jeff.
Well, yes, thank you. And Atalo had some exciting news that they reported yesterday.
Yes, Genius Extraction, which we believe to be the best out there, signed a contract to do all of our extraction. And we are, today, we think we're the largest extraction company in the United States. We'll be doing, by September, 200 pounds an hour. And it's a very exciting place to be today. And long term, we think that's one cannabinoid that has a sale value, but there are 60 plus others in my lifetime that will have individual compound values. And we'll be able to do all of that. So that is the news. It's on the front page of our Kentucky paper today, which is really exciting for us since the news comes from New York.
And we thank you for doing that here.
Sure.
The one thing that all of us are challenged with who are in this industry is not only finding those partnerships, but also finding the money to bring together the essential components. Processing is one of those very important. It's a 10 to multiple $1 million investment. And with the uncertainty about where the legislation is going, unless you have these three gentlemen working with you, people are a little reluctant right now, but we are slowly making our way, and this announcement that you made yesterday is just proof that this is something that's possible. So you've heard a lot about CBD. All of us here are very big believers in the full potential for this crop. Fiber and others is something that's going to be very important, but CBD right now is one of the mainstream of revenues that are going to get this industry up and running. So Tim Gordon, a fellow Canadian, has joined us from CBDRX. They are one of the CBD companies that has prospered very well. They brand themselves as being a organic CBD extraction company. People say, well, how can you possibly do that? And maybe, Tim, you can tell us a little bit about your business model and what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah, again, I'm Tim Gordon. Thanks everyone for coming and being here. And thanks again, Jeff. Yeah, CBDRX is the currently only USDA certified organic hemp farm in the country. And it was quite arduous process, and it continues to be. We just were recently given our recertification for our hemp, at both our R&D farm and our large-scale production farms over in Colorado. As some of you may have heard, the USDA also put a moratorium on the certification of industrial hemp based on the federal landscape and where we are standing right now. With that, CBDR started about 2 years ago, and shortly after it started, we have a couple of folks in the company who were very instrumental in pushing for organic. I'm a Schedule I CB. By CB, I say cannabinoid. I'm a Schedule I farmer. Pretty amazing as the national landscape comes out to have a USDA certification for a federally illegal product. So like I said, CBDRX is currently the only organic hemp farm, and we really pride ourselves on that. We are all plant passionate at CBDRX. When you think about the whole realm of the plant and our relationship to cannabis, there's only 3 types of cannabinoids that exist, right? There's a synthetic that's produced synthetically, phytocannabinoids in the plant, and endocannabinoids, endogenous, that are in mammalia. There's only one plant, there's only one phylum, the Cannabinoids phylum, that has the direct relationship to human beings in the, receiving cannabinoids, the phytocannabinoids from a plant into our own endocannabinoid system. We're probably all endocannabinoid deficient, in a sense. We haven't had the exposure to the plant in over how many years? Nearly 75. Organic farming, getting back to that statement, was really, in a sense, a no-brainer for us. Like I said, we're all very plant passionate, and when we're creating a product that some of you may use for a topical or an ingestible product of some kind, in our eyes, the only way to do this was organically, and is to give our clients and our clientele the best possible product that we possibly can.
Excellent. So we've all heard the story of young Charlotte Figge. It's actually why I'm in this industry. Certainly, the stories that Sanjay Gupta told about Charlotte were so motivating for so many people. Many of us did not understand that this child was actually taking a industrial hemp extract. But the people that have achieved this have become dear friends of mine. They've inspired me to get involved in this industry. Joel Stanley and his brothers are leaders in this space. But I asked Joel to come here today to talk about how they have mixed their medical marijuana business with an industrial hemp business, as they are the creators of Charlotte's Web Hemp, as well as the Stanley Brothers Medical Marijuana. I could go on ad nauseum about what these gentlemen have done for people around the world, but I'll ask you maybe to share your story.
Thank you, Jeff. And thank you for having me on the panel in this expo. It's been brilliant. Nice work. Our story was really, Jeff mentioned we're in both hemp and medical marijuana. Really, our story and Charlotte's Web, what you know as Charlotte's Web, comes out of medical marijuana. We started in medical marijuana about 9 years ago, and back then there were no industrial hemp regulations federally or in the state of Colorado. We started in medical marijuana, primary interest in cancer, specifically helping to offset the side effects of chemotherapy and radiation, and potentially what cannabinoids had the ability to do for the underlying disease itself. That was our goal, that was our focus. We began searching for CBD in various genetics, I'd say probably about 8 years ago. And about 4.5 years ago, February 2012, a mother came to us, Paige Figge was her name, and she came to us and her daughter, 5 years old at the time, Charlotte, was having 300 to 400 violent seizures every week, and they were out of medical options. Most of you probably know the story, so I'll move through it pretty quick. They were out of medical options, and she had done her research and found that perhaps this non-psychoactive cannabinoid found in the cannabis plant known as cannabidiol, CBD, could potentially help her daughter. Well, sure enough, she found us. We made extracts for Charlotte. She titrated a specific milligram dose to start so she could see if it was working, just like she would have any other medication. And Charlotte went her first week seizure-free from 300-ish. Now, here we are 4.5 years later, and Charlotte remains 99.9% seizure-free. After Charlotte, that story really exploded in August 2013 with Sanjay Gupta's weed, if you've seen it. And at that moment in time, we went from a real small viral story within the epilepsy community to this worldwide story, and we had hundreds of families move into Colorado. All we had was medical marijuana. All we had was the medical marijuana regulatory framework, which is very stringent, very strict, very difficult to scale up. So August 2013, all we have is medical marijuana. We have a growing waiting list, growing up over 14,000 people, these very desperate families needing an option. And at that moment in time, there were very few people on the planet that could even pronounce the word cannabidiol. So this wasn't like it is now. This wasn't being mass produced in different places. So that waiting list was very heavy for my family. And fortunately, here's where hemp comes in. Hemp came in to save the day for us and for the families we serve. So right after the Sanjay Gupta piece, Amendment 64 passed in Colorado, which most people know is legalizing recreational marijuana. Well, it also legalized hemp in Colorado. Right? A few months later, the Farm Bill spoken of here was passed. This is February 2014, signed into law, marking the first time that industrial hemp could be cultivated here in the U.S. domestically. And I don't know how long. How long was that?
Well, since 1970, technically.
Since 1970, okay. So we were able to take our genetics for Charlotte's Web and move into industrial hemp because it is very low THC. That saved us. We went into an economy of scale, and we were able to end the waiting list in just a year's time from the first time we were allowed to grow hemp in the U.S. So full circle, Charlotte's Web kept Stanley Brothers very, very busy for the last several years. It was an honor. It was an amazing thing to be a part of. It changed a lot of minds throughout the Midwest, throughout the Bible Belt. A lot of conservative minds that otherwise wouldn't hear about marijuana or hemp. Now we're looking back to our roots. We started in medical marijuana. We used to be very good at the THC game. So Stanley Brothers are going back to work with higher THC and our brand Stanley Brothers. You can check out our booth over here. It's very important that people understand that all hemp is cannabis, but not all cannabis is hemp. And the delineating factor here in the U.S. is that it remains below 0.3% THC. So you have a psychoactive side of cannabis we all know as marijuana, and a non-psychoactive side that we all know as hemp. And as it was mentioned, the other cannabinoids, I mean, we've just barely broken ground with what hemp can be as a food source and as a dietary supplement. We have no idea what cannabichromine, CBC, or cannabigerol, CBG. The list goes on. We have no idea what these are going to do for us, because these cannabinoids fit our bodies lock and key to little receptors we just found out we had in the early 90s, the endocannabinoid system. So I'm very excited about this industry. I'm very excited to see different hemp groups around. I'm excited to hear progress around the table politically, legally, business-wise. This is going to be a massive industry that's going to help so many people. And so I think you're sitting in the right room if you're interested in it. I'm excited to see what unfolds over the next decade for industrial hemp and for medical marijuana. Thank you.
Thank you. So I don't know how many of you were here yesterday, but the presidential candidate, Governor Johnson from New Mexico, was here and spoke to a huge crowd in the media next door. And one of the things that he did was an interview with CNN and talked about the cannabis industry, both industrial hemp and medical marijuana, becoming one of the largest economic drivers over the next 5 to 10 years. And the reporters were questioning him as to what he really meant by that. And he turned around and said, just take a look at what's out here. And to see, automotive manufacturers and others, housing manufacturers, really starting to look at the potential for this crop, in addition to the supplemental side and the food side, it really kind of took the reporter by surprise. They were really surprised at his response to this. And I guess my next question to our panelists is, we have all been working together to move the legislative issues forward, and maybe we can talk about some of the things that we've just done recently. We organized, Jonathan and I and Eric organized a hemp summit in Washington and tried to bring the industry together, because one of the things that we need to do is not be fragmented. We need to figure out a made in America process, if I gave my Canadianism away, to figure out how to build an industry, because the worst thing that we can all do is get our legislation in place and Kentucky start growing one strain and Pennsylvania growing something else and Colorado doing something else, and then all of a sudden there isn't that supply chain that manufacturers like the automotive industry is looking for. So we need to start working together, and that's actually what Jonathan was doing with this summit that we had on, and maybe you can talk about that and where we're going.
Sure. It really it's now the screensaver on my computer at work. The picture of the 35 of us that joined for the summit. And the photographer Ben is sitting in the front row. So. But I have it up there because I really do believe that 10 years from now, when we look back at all the great successes, that there will be the Microsoft and the Apple and the Twitter and the Facebook of the hemp industry all gathered together to get in common cause.
Jonathan, if I could just interrupt, there was an announcement made today by Kind Financial and Microsoft that they have just joined together in a software development. Yeah, so there you go.
I saw that in the Times, yeah. So the challenge, though, is, as you know, the Microsoft and Facebook, and I mean, those guys are bitter enemies these days. And anytime an industry starts, you've got people that all have a common goal, but also have a competitive nature here. And we have several different organizations who have different ideas in terms of how we should pursue the final legal solution. Again, we're in a great space here that we've talked about, but we'd like to be in a space where hemp is completely removed from the Controlled Substances Act. And the question is, and that CBD is not treated by the Food and Drug Administration as something that can only be prescribed by physicians and can only be monopolized by one British company, which is another fear that we can talk about at more length. But what is really encouraging is that we had all of these folks in one room, and that they agreed on a joint strategy to pursue a piece of legislation, as well as potentially to pursue the potential litigation, whether it's proactively or reactively, to help deal with the remaining issues of federal agencies that are not following what we believe is federal law. The other thing, too, which is really interesting, which a few folks have hinted at, I think Andy talked about it a little bit as well, is that we're in this weird era where we do have this federal imprimatur, but federal agencies and universities that get federal funding are still a little nervous about dealing with hemp because of the uncertainty and because of the common misperceptions of what's happening with federal law in marijuana. But we are expecting any day now, we've been expecting this for several weeks, a joint statement from the USDA, the Department of Justice, and the FDA that will help clarify that federal law does permit hemp under this regulatory regime of the Farm Bill, and that we're hopeful that this will open up these agencies, particularly USDA, to treat hemp just like any other crop, so that we'll have more than one organic certification. Hopefully we'll have dozens, so that grants and loans that are available to farmers trying to diversify from tobacco can have those kinds of funds available to them. And so that hopefully ultimately the federal government will get behind promoting hemp as an export to other countries, as opposed to just importing it from other countries. So we're still a ways away, but do know the exciting thing is that we've got the industry united, working in one force, and hopefully that together we will be a lot stronger than we were fighting it all separately.
Well, and in addition to that, I'm also, Paige Figge and I created the Coalition for Access Now, which is the 501c4, which is the lobbying group for, and kind of a companion group to the Realm of Caring. We obviously have many of our family members who are going to Congress right now, and we have a separate set of bills both in the House and the Senate, and we're getting lots of support, in part because of our family story. What most members of Congress really haven't looked at, because they want to be sympathetic to these families, is that if they pass that legislation, they will also be indirectly passing an industrial hemp piece of legislation. So we're hoping that will go, but we're also going to be using our Realm of Caring families to really get behind supporting these efforts so that we can move the industrial hemp legislation this year. And we have thousands of families that are going to help join this, and we're going to ask those members of Congress who are supporting the coalition's legislation to also support the industrial hemp legislation. And I think, Eric, combined that's about 120, 130 members of Congress.
Yeah, I think that's about right, Jeff. Yeah, there's a significant number of people that are supporting one bill but not the other. So if we combine
Yeah,
that,
and I don't mind sharing that, Speaker Paul Ryan has committed to our families that he will move this CBD legislation this year. And of course, we've got election process. The people who are in part of the Obama administration bureaucracy, they want to get things moving as well because no one really knows what's going to come in January. So I think they really are starting to listen. They understand the impact. USDA has been very kind and open to me in trying to look at how they can get this done quickly. The friends at DOJ and DEA are giving them a little more challenges. I'm wondering whether or not we might open some questions from our people in the audience, if that gentleman has one back there. Yes. If you could maybe stand up and just tell us your name and...
Is there any discussion about the potential of the oil from the hemp seed and actually creating fuel? Things of that nature. I first old advice that this is an extra power city bus. Is there any stance that you see it taking against petroleum and using gasoline or anything of that nature?
That's an excellent question. There's been some research at the University of Connecticut, UConn, on using hemp seed oil as biodiesel. I think the general consensus is that the value added for hemp seed oil, with where we are with petroleum right now, that it might be useful, for example, on a farm if a farmer wants to press some oil and run his diesel tractor on it or something like that. But in terms of a commercial application, there's too much value in the oil. But there is another potential, and that is potentially using the stalk, the biomass. And that's still an area that there needs to be some more research on that to see. I know they're doing it with sugarcane, and hemp creates a lot of biomass in a very short period of time. So I think there's potential there, but it seems like from what I've heard, it really needs to happen in a very regional kind of a way, because the cost of transporting and processing doesn't really enable it to be moved long distances. But in a regional situation, it might make a lot of sense.
And Andy's earlier generations will know this, and if many of you don't, Henry Ford built one of the first vehicles that used industrial hemp as one of the elements in building his vehicle, but he also fueled them with hemp ethanol. So it has been proven, and I believe he grew 45 acres, and all of his executive cars were driven with it. So it has been done before. I think the technology is there, but Andy, you might...
Let me interject something here. We need to talk first about the fact that it's limited in terms of what's available. CBD all the way down to the proteins, the hemp proteins that come directly from the seed and the hemp oil. So we have to talk about scaling this crop. That is a conversation that has to be had very soon, because if we're the leaders, then I need to tell you that there's not enough available, and the price is too darn high, particularly for the CBD. And we have to get out of the greenhouses and quit acting like, we've got these prima donna mamas. We've got to learn about feminization, which we're working on at Atalo. Definitely our farmers are going to have a ways to. Currently, we actually pull the males to give a female plant, but we have a large number of farmers that are producing for grain using regular combines. But that whole genetics that we're using is coming from somewhere else. So our productions are not as good. So we need to talk about scaling, and we need to talk about market penetration, which virtually doesn't exist for all of these crops. Some of us have it in our houses, but not enough of us to really count yet. That'll push the entire subject to a higher level as a result of the volume that you'll have. We operate under a pilot program. We can continue this as the laws change. They will change. They will change because the voices and the volume of those voices will force that change to come.
And I think that many of us have also, coming from Canada, realize, we've had industrial hemp in Canada growing in our farmlands for some 22 years now. When it first was introduced, it was to great fanfare. People wanted to grow it everywhere. Investors wanted to invest. But as Andy just said, the difficulty that we had is that no one created a market. No one knew what industrial hemp or hemp was, and it failed miserably. Most of the people went out of business. A lot of the investors walked away, and it has taken the rest of those 20 years to get back up to where they are, to the point where Canada today is a little nervous about what's happening in the United States because they only use their crop right now for primarily seed production.
That's correct.
So,
You got lots more questions out there.
sir.
Yeah, Josh Davis, can you talk about sort of in reference to what you were saying about big agro and how that will affect the industry?
Well, it's just like Jeff said, you've got to have enough production before you ever generate a market. SeedCX exists today as a group that will be able to bring this commodity, and that's what it'll be at some point in time, to the Chicago Board of Trade. And just like soybeans and corn, that's not an awful thing. No one's talking at all about genetically modifying. That's not it. But in order for this crop to have a real market, and by the way, it is the newest, best source of protein since soybeans. And you know that soybeans is what we've all had as children growing up for the chicken and the turkey and the beef that we are eating. And there's some bad side effects. So more than ever, this protein source needs to be available. I would think there would be a successful day if our company, little as it is, could have him as a protein source on every school lunch. Right, so we need to make the market bigger. We need to talk about scalable, get it out of the greenhouses. The pollen is a subject of fear for the CBD guys, but feminization of that plant in a good way, and we speak about chemical feminization. We don't know enough about it yet. We as a company and our science advisory board, which is the best thing we ever did, put together, because they work with the university and they speak their own language. The universities have access to information that you and I won't have. So if you have science minds that get in touch with that, then it helps everyone.
Great.
Is there data available of what the projections necessary to create a step-by-step or maybe a leaf-by-leaf process of how much we have to grow to create X amount of product, leaving aside for the moment the science that goes into specific cannabinoids that we don't know about yet? So just on the level of food production, for example, like the Canadians do, there must be projections there as to how they use it and how many acres are required per year.
Well, they've been growing for 18 years. There's only about 100,000 acres. Remember that they cannot, no farmer in Canada currently can actually hold or have in his possession the leaf or the bud. The only thing they can do with it mostly is for fiber and or oil. Those are all crazy sorts of laws that are in place. I don't know, they're going to change that pretty soon. But there's 100,000 acres and there is no stored product. It's gone the minute it's crushed, it's into the marketplace. So let's double that number. That's not even a big number, 200,000. So I'm going to tell you 1 million acres in the next 5 years is very doable. Move it into the marketplace. But CCX probably would have some data on that. I personally don't have it in my head.
No, and of that 100,000 acres that are in Canada, it has an economic impact of about $2.5 billion. And as Eric will say, about 550 million, 600 million of that comes to America. Those jobs should be here. Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
My name's Dan. I own J&P Farms. We are the largest producer of organic in the state. We've got 1,200 acres. We just partnered with Morrisville, and now we have the first industrial hemp license in New York. And we just got our DEA permit, which is pretty historic because we are the first sort of private farm that didn't have to go through the state ag department to get a DEA permit. So
Congratulations.
thank you. We're excited about that, but the question I have, we're doing about 30 acres this year. All of our grain and stocks are spoken for. We have end buyers. One of them is in Pennsylvania. That's a major power product company. I've heard the interstate travel issue come up a few times, and my reading of the omnibus bill is that because interstate travel is still a federal issue, that the DEA feels that is still prohibited and that they can interfere with cross-state travel. But from what some of you had said, it seems like that might not be the case. It's important for us because we would have to process the seeds in-state to bring them to the manufacturer in Pennsylvania, where we prefer just to give them the raw seed, bring it across the state, and have them do it there. And I've spoken to some legislators in DC, and they've all said, well, it's a gray area, you're better off, doing it in-state, sterilizing it, and then bringing it across. I'm wondering what you guys think.
So welcome to the world of industrial hemp in America. And you need to get to know Jonathan.
So, from my point of view, and for anybody that reads the language of the statute, it's a black and white issue. That doesn't mean the DEA agrees, and you might be encountering problems with this. But if you are licensed as part of a pilot program with a Department of Agriculture or a university, and you're in a state that's passed a law like New York, the omnibus law could not be more clear that federal agencies cannot use federal dollars to interfere with the interstate sale or transport or commerce of these products.
Nothing shall prohibit the sale, transport.
Yeah, it is.
And that includes phoning you to tell you that you're wrong. They can't spend that money.
There are a couple challenges, and so there are a few challenges with this. Number one, and I have to, and you'll see my legal opinion, I have to put all these things at the end. I want to qualify it here with you as well. The omnibus law expires in September. Now, the good news is that the appropriations bills will have to be renewed by then. There's a process where they might be continued. If the Congress can't come up with an agreement, what they'll normally do is they'll continue this, which means that we'll take this law and we'll advance it. So they might say it's advanced till December until we can come to an agreement. And it's very rare. It's very rare for Congress to go backwards. It's very rare to say, okay, we've done this through September. The next time around, we're not going to let you do it. But it's possible, and so we have to give you that possibility. The second thing is, as a matter of federal law, you could transport it and sell it in Georgia, but as a matter of state law, Georgia might say, no, you can't do that. And I'm just using Georgia as an example, we've actually had some issues with Missouri, which Missouri says is a matter of state law. So that is a challenge there with how the state law is interpreted. But the DEA should not be in this business. And in fact, you should not need a DEA permit to grow hemp as part of a pilot program. One of the challenges we've had in Kentucky is that we did not pursue that litigation completely. The DEA backed off and they said, okay, we'll do a memorandum of understanding with the state, because our Commissioner Comer, who's going to be Congressman Comer in a few weeks, by the way, he just won the Republican primary, and we Democrats don't have anybody strong to run against him. But Commissioner Comer said, listen, we don't want to keep fighting this for another few years. We want to take this victory, have these pilot programs. And so it is not, we have not settled, we have not beaten down the DEA completely yet. And that might need to happen, and maybe you're a test case. But it could not be more clear as a matter of federal law, the DEA should not be involved in that. Interstate should not be involved in it. DEA should not. Now, again, the Georgia State Police, that's a different issue that we need to look at, but the DEA should not be involved.
Well, and this is why where we are right now, we've got these two bills that are pending in Congress. You know, the one in the House, H.R. 525, now has 70 co-sponsors, bipartisan support. The Senate bill, which includes the Majority Leader, Senator McConnell, has 14 co-sponsors. We've made a lot of progress, but we've got to get more and more people pushing to get those through. Whether we can do it this session before the end of the year, or whether we have to do it in the 115th Congress is a question mark. We're pushing hard to hopefully get it through. But if anybody's interested, I've got an update. I'd be happy to share some materials about all the specific where we are politically in the states after. Just see me afterwards. But also, if you can go to votehemp.com/take action, there's an opportunity to write your legislators and let them know where you stand on this. And for example, in New York, we have Senator Gillibrand has come on board. We still need Senator Schumer Representative Tonko, thanks to your work, Dan, has come on board, and we've got some other folks as well. So in any case, if anybody's interested in getting involved in helping, that's something you can do.
Yeah, and this is an important point, I mean, what Eric says, because I don't think this is a gray area, but there are some that do. If we pass this legislation, there's no more gray area, and that's why we're working so hard to do that, so we don't, a farmer like yourself might not want to take on the DEA in federal court. So this is why.
Actually, less us, it's the end buyer that might not want to, and I don't know if they're,
Yeah.
feel like they're have immunity, they
But
don't want to get
It's that uncertainty that's holding us back. The whole market, like Andy's talking about getting to 1 million acres, I think we can do that, but not until we break through and we move this from being a pilot programs and research to full commercial, state-regulated DEAs out of the picture.
But again,
Are you doing just seed and stock? You have exemptions that the CBD oils don't really have, that are a little less clear in my world, because we use the whole plant. But you have exemptions from the Controlled Substance Act and specific case precedent in your favor from Ninth Circuit.
I will tell you that the DEA's position from our conversations is it's a controlled substance until it goes in the ground, and then it's state law. So even what you yield.
That position was deemed unenforceable, unlawful by the Ninth Circuit. You're not in the Ninth Circuit, but nevertheless, it's still meaningful. I wouldn't be terribly afraid, especially if I were dealing with seeds and stalks, because of the specific exemption within the Controlled Substance Act.
yeah, and if there's any folks, again, we can dig down as deep as you like, but if there's anybody that is looking for, I mean, I produce a lot of legal opinions to give end buyers some comfort on this kind of stuff, and there's nothing I'd rather do than to take my Louisville Slugger and to fight something in court. The DEA, that to me is a lot of fun.
And we've all discussed this at our summit, that we were looking for yet another opportunity to raise this issue. So you might be our guy. Yes, I'm sorry, this gentleman, yes.
I'm Diesel, I grow, but I wanted to find out, what's the situation with how early can people get farming or cultivating or some kind of agricultural license? I'm out of the closet and grow for real.
It depends on what state you're in.
You said Pennsylvania?
He said Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So growing industrial hemp in Pennsylvania, here is the great challenge in Pennsylvania. We have two bills that unanimously passed in both of their chambers, in the House and the Senate. Not one no vote. Not one no vote. However, for those of you that don't understand the legislative process, that means nothing. It just means everybody voted in favor of it. They need to decide now which of those two bills are going to be sent to the other chamber, because you need consent from the other chamber in order to make it to the governor's desk to sign.
Would that possibly happen this year, or is it still?
The Pennsylvania Hemp Industry Council and all of our members have been working, and we now have a commitment that next week one of the bills will move through the Senate Agriculture and World Affairs Committee, and the governor is waiting to sign that bill with my hemp pen. So that will only start the process, because we need to get our regulations in place, which will allow us to start to grow next year. Yes, sir.
My question is really geared towards the agricultural aspect of it, because this plant has been sort of hidden away for 80 years, and it hasn't really, modern agriculture hasn't really touched it. And I'm not talking about GMO as modern, because we moved beyond that. But what are the characteristics that you're seeing from an agricultural aspect that the plant has that's maybe not as optimized, or that could be more optimized for future? Because right now it's CBD, that's the major market. There's seed production, there's biomass, there's a bunch of other characteristics that the plant has. What in the longer term do you see
has the characteristics that are advantageous?
I see a few things. Thank you.
And before he gets
Off the
into
screen.
this, it has not really been hidden away because our federal government spends $100 million a year eradicating hemp.
Well,
So it's not that hidden away.
that's true, but it's been very directed in different
Right.
areas. So that breeding has been done in a very targeted way and a concentrated way. So
Right.
iron law prohibition is channeled that maybe.
I have one of my favorite people out at our farm is our botanist who is now handling all of our breeding programs, right? And so CBD was kind of the big craze there for a little while. Other cannabinoids are going to hit, so breeding to optimize higher levels for other minor non-psychoactive cannabinoids. That's very important, but also seed nut size. The amount of seed you can harvest from a plant, things as simple, breeding for things as simple as a plant that will hold on to the seed for the right amount of time so that you can harvest it through the right combine, right? Just simple things like that, hemp farmers like us are looking forward to optimize how much we can produce out of an acre. Same thing with fiber. We can certainly optimize the fiber. In some places around the world, some of these things have been done decently. But the hope is that this is done very organically, Mendelian breeding, and that we don't see GMO jump on this in such a way to really, then take such a beautiful plant and then we start finding all of this unnatural mutant aspects of it. But I bet Andy has some thoughts on this too.
I echo exactly what Joel's saying. It's all about real science that will bring about, and I'll borrow some of that science from the marijuana world. When you have people who are able to, over time, breed a plant that'll go from around 6% THC up to 30 plus, that's what science can do for hemp, only in a different sort of venue. We certainly need to have grain varieties that hold the seed. We need to have grain varieties that'll produce larger production amounts. We need to have universities step up to the plate and quit waiting for a handout in research dollars, but accept the challenge. That's what they were established for, to do this sort of thing. We're seeing it at our own university more so than ever, but they're really not as much as I would like them to be. And I would say to anybody who's from Pennsylvania, got some really astute colleges in the state of Pennsylvania. Why don't somebody go and try to get some of them on board? It's all about research and development and those things that ag tech can bring to the forefront. We actually have plans. Joel mentioned the size of seed. We have plans in our own company to be able to, because the tobacco world had pelletized tobacco seed. We can pelletize this seed. They use biatomous clay and make the seed bigger so that modern planters can recognize that seed and plant it in specific increments down the road. We can do that now, but we still have got a long way to go. This is what I'm telling you. We scale up as quickly as we can, while we're waiting for the law to act in the fashion that we would like it to.
And as we're scaling up, we also need to scale up equipment, because there really isn't any equipment to start to even attempt to harvest 1 million acres. We're lucky that the intuition and determination of farmers today is that they're going to take this on and they're going to try to make this work with existing equipment. But we need to also get research and money invested into doing new equipment. And is that what you're experiencing, Andy?
That's exactly right. I mean, farmers are like blacksmith. That's not even a word anybody uses anymore, because nobody knows what a blacksmith is much. However, we're finding that the combines of today hate this crop, and particularly certain varieties of it. It's like swallowing a rope. And that doesn't work well in machinery. So we're finding that stripper headers do a better job. The material does not, it's not massive amounts of material going through the machine. So that's just one aspect. But shouldn't that have been an answer, and shouldn't you see that from your university? That's what they're designed to do, is research and development for America, for agriculture of America.
And it
it's
should
slow,
no
but
longer
it's
be that Penn State, for example, is interested in this, but to find the money for them to undertake this research, they would go to their usual cast of characters, and in Penn State's case, it's companies like Monsanto.
Okay, so that's how you end up getting these things that we all think we don't like, called GMOs. When you have the Monsantos of the world, which you love to hate them. Without them, we wouldn't have a country with an ample food supply. However, there's some things that have happened about that don't really benefit us all, okay? But I'm just saying that we need to move in a direction of quick research. And the other thing you need to do is, everybody in this room, if you're not a member of the HIA, you need to help Eric's group, because he's moved this subject and the ball farther than anybody else in the years that he's been fooling with it.
And,
One of the things that we did in Oregon was recommend, there's a governor appointed task force to recommend the state to a research task force on the side and agriculture side. We recommended that they put in a specific institute funded by the recreational industry
Yes.
to provide that basic research that the universities are not able to take on right now.
and certainly what they're doing on the private sector with Atalo's research, it's, yeah, I mean, we'd all welcome lots of money going into it.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And of course, our company is like many startups. We're raising money. We've got a Series A going on right now for all of these things that we're talking about, because we don't know all the answers, but in order to have more answers available for our farmers, we've got to expand everything we're doing in order to make it grow.
And Tim, did you have something to say?
I just, kind of echoing on what Andy said. I think the big thing with hemp and farming in general is eco-sustainability and really farming smart. And that's one of the, that should be really the, it shouldn't be how much acreage you can grow, but what kind of volume and what kind of inputs and what are you getting from the acreage that you're farming, really. So I really, what's that? Efficiency, sustainability, eco-sustainability. So I really, when it comes to farming, I really encourage all of our panelists, things like that, but I really encourage you guys as you're coming into the industry, not necessarily to think, wow, these guys are growing 25,000 acres or 100 million acres, but what are they doing environmentally? What are they doing for the plant? And are they good at eco-sustainable farmers?
Right. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to focus back to CBD for a minute. I was wondering what your thoughts were about the intractable epilepsy patients, in particular the pediatric patients, using CBD from industrial hemp stock that is not necessarily from the United States, that is just being ordered over the internet and administered to these patients. What are your thoughts?
That's where the industry needs to come back into our court and to our farmers, where we can produce something for you that's organic. You know exactly where it comes from. So you know what plant on my field it came from. So that's where we need to focus. The European industry has flourished for many years, but it's time to get U.S. farmers, get our soil back, and get us hemp farming again. And we can supply that, where you don't have a question, you don't have any worries, because you're getting a certified organic product grown right in your backyard. That's the future of CBD.
Joel might have a stronger
I would
opinion
add-
about that.
I got this question yesterday. Someone asked, what about imported hemp specifically? And I think that's what they were trying to ask, the question you asked. Whether it comes from the U.S. or not, now, of course, we'd like it to come from the U.S. We're Americans. This panel's made in America. That's not as important as what is the starting material. And
This is what I wanted to sort of clarify, as you were saying that it is from the stock, it's paste from the stock.
yeah. oftentimes, and as I said, back when we had a waiting list of 14,000 people, I'm sure that lots of other companies would have loved to have serviced those folks, but the milligrams of CBD didn't exist. And in fact, almost every product that was on Amazon back then was bullshit. It was a disservice to every family out there trying to buy it because the milligrams didn't exist. And so people felt forced to go to industrial hemp, grown in China, grown in Romania, grown wherever. It doesn't matter where it was grown again. But it wasn't grown for the purpose. It wasn't hemp that was bred to have high enough levels of CBD. And so what you'd have to do is you'd have to take acres and acres of it to extract down into one small bowl. And what you have to understand about that is that hemp is also a good land reclamation crop, right? All plants pull certain amounts of lead, right? Different heavy metals. And if it was hemp grown for fiber purposes, who knows what pesticide was used on it? So now you have a Chinese entity that's willing to sell it to anyone and someone else just buying it. Well, when you go to extract as many milligrams as you really need from that much biomass, you're also pulling these other things potentially.
Is there a way to get that out?
Yes, but it's not efficient. Now you're talking about jacking the price way up, right? Now you're talking about chromatography efforts, things like that, to actually purify this now. So starting material is important, right? But I wouldn't say that it couldn't be done from the stalk or from paste from the stalk, because the other side of it that's so important is chain of custody. Does this company have control over their farmers, or are they the farmers? When you go to look at any product, is this controlled from seed to the final product? Do you know what went into it? Do you know what was sprayed on it? Do you know, was it tested throughout? And so that control is pretty much as important as the starting genetics, but the starting genetics only help that company when it's CBD rich to provide a product at lower cost that doesn't have as many risks of pulling along with it dangerous levels of heavy metals or pesticides. So it's like this. We can all eat an apple, and we're all going to get some level, some fractional level, some acceptable level of heavy metals. Concentrate a whole orchard and eat it in a moment, probably kill you, right? So that's the way to look at this. It's important that the company know what genetics they're using and that they control that.
Let me address the legal issue too here, because this is you hint at an important legal issue that is the other shoe to drop. We spoke earlier about the legalization of hemp, period, but the issue of talking about CBD and promoting it for medicinal uses is the next battleground. It's actually sort of started now, and understand we now are kind of still we are in a gray area when it comes to CBD. And we have a number of good companies, which are represented up here, and then some bad companies that are generally importing this from overseas, are sometimes what they're advertising as CBD oil is not CBD oil. They do not use good manufacturing processes like the gentlemen up here use. And they often claim, hey, take this and it'll cure cancer and cure epilepsy. And I think as this evolves, we're going to see some internal organizations, self-regulatory organizations within the hemp industry pop up to help law enforcement, help FDA understand who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. And I think you're going to see a bifurcation of some sorts of CBD that is sold as a medicine for medicinal uses, over the counter, pharmaceutical, and then you'll see CBD oil as it's sold currently as a nutritional supplement, as a dietary supplement, as a food, where there's no promotion, where it doesn't say, hey, this is going to cure anything, but it's, people can read into it what they want, they can take whatever risk they want. But both of these being produced with good manufacturing processes so that the good guys are separated from the bad guys.
Great.
And good agricultural practices.
Yeah, so as you saw, we have to wrap up the session. I can take one more question, and I see a gentleman in the back.
Hi, my name is Evan, and this is a question for Mr. Stanley. Does your company have any plans on researching new demographics to test your products with or market your products to?
We've been doing that for quite some time, actually. I'm assuming you're asking if potentially our product or other products similar can help with other disease states. Is that?
Neurological.
Okay. Yeah, and our company and any company that's in CBD as a food or dietary supplement has to tread very lightly as far as how they approach the topic of researching for a disease state, right? Simply because, the FDA has a habit of saying, oh, you're studying it for this, so therefore you're making that claim, therefore it's a drug, therefore you got to pull it from the market, therefore you got to go hurt all your clients who might just need this. So we have to be very careful how we do it. And the way that we do it is through other organizations, awesome organizations. There's one out there called the Realm of Caring. They have a subsidiary organization that is called IROC. There's a couple of members floating around here today. Actually, Marcel Bond-Miller from University of Pennsylvania and VA Hospital. If you want to ask him about it, he can probably shoot you some really good, quick information on what we're actually looking into for Charlotte's Web, yes, but also for other cannabinoids. We have something that has been deemed a neuroprotectant by the National Institute of Health. So other neurological disorders outside of epilepsy, the one that everyone knows, are certainly impacted by cannabinoids. The Realm of Caring also collects data. We've seen a lot of Parkinson's, a lot of multiple sclerosis, Tourette's, autism. So yes, it's happening, but what I can actually say about it as CEO of a for-profit company that's a dietary supplement company is very limited. So I strongly encourage anyone who wants to know about the research, go talk to the Realm of Caring folks. They're brilliant over there.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a good question, though.
Thank you all. Gentlemen. Many of these gentlemen will be out on the floor. We have to move, so another session should start. So thank you for your investment of time, ladies and gentlemen.